Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I know today we're going to discuss mobile device management, and we hope everyone in the event today can get some guidance to help you determine, where to best focus some of your security posture. We know that mobile device management may be a gap that some organizations aren't currently deploying. As always, we're going to record the session today in case anyone joins late or if they couldn't make it during the event today. This is a live stream, so we're going to mute all lines, but we are going to record the session. We're still planning on taking your questions throughout the event in the Q&A. So do us a favor, go ahead and try and open up that Q&A panel now. Ask your questions as you think of them. Have everyone take a minute right now and drop us a note. Let us know that you found that Q&A window and tell us, what are your challenges? Are you currently using device management at your organization? And share with us any comments or questions that you may have. A little bit about DiamondIT. We're a security-focused managed services provider. We were founded in 2005, and we have office locations in both Bakersfield and in Los Angeles. We're really proud of our associations with groups with organizations like Vistage and Evolve peer groups. Our memberships in these organizations, they help us constantly improve and mature our security offerings. Here we share ideas with other like-minded organizations, all have the common goal of being best-in-class service providers. We're also on the Secure the Village Leadership Council. We take a great deal of pride in educating the business community. That's why we do these monthly webinar events. It really does take a village, to attain a strong security posture, and it's important for us to serve as cyber guardians. We know that when we offer guidance to the community, it makes the business community a much safer place for everyone. Co-hosting the event today with me is Cody Cooper. He is the Chief Security Officer for DiamondIT, also our service manager. He's our resident security expert, and we really are very proud of him recently passing his CISSP certification. My name is Jeremy, and I'm the lead VCTO at DiamondIT, but with the introductions out of the way, we're going to turn things over to Cody real quick, and he's going to talk about device management and how that may help you reduce risk in your organization. Cody, we don't have any audio from you, bud.
Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate that. Appreciate the introduction there. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We're going to spend some time talking about mobile devices or device management. We're going to be covering what that term means. What does mobile device actually mean in today's world? We'll cover how mobile devices interact with modern organizations and businesses. We'll talk about the security concerns that we now face because of that. And after we identify those concerns, we're going to discuss 5 different ways that an organization can reduce or eliminate that risk that these devices bring. Specifically, we will discuss how to control and monitor those devices from a technical standpoint. Then we will move into administrative options that can be deployed, hopefully a little bit cheaper, and then discuss alternatives to mobile devices to completely avoid that risk if you decide that you need to. And then finally, as Jeremy mentioned before, please do interact in chat. Please let us know if you have any questions. Don't hesitate to ask. And you're always welcome to email or call us later. If there's anything else you'd like more information on, happy to provide it. Like Jeremy said, we do Secure the Village. We're very, very ingrained with the community, because if your community isn't secure, then you can't be either. So with this out of the way, we'll get to it. But please don't hesitate to let us know if you have any questions. So the first thing that we want to cover is what is a mobile device and what are mobile devices in today's business? So the advent of the microprocessor and the increasingly smaller circuits has allowed for an explosion in mobile devices. You know about desktops and laptops, but there's also smartwatches, doorbells, refrigerators, headsets. Almost anything can be considered wireless these days. I think I heard recently that there's now wireless refrigerators, so you can take a picture of the inside of your fridge while you're grocery shopping in case you don't remember if you have milk or not. So really, almost anything wireless can be a mobile device. These devices can be programmed to receive email. They can update you on the latest news. They can play games, and they can track your usage for convenience, right? But the less talked about underbelly of what these advances mean is that any device that can be programmed can also be exploited. If it's wireless, it can be hacked wirelessly. If it stores data, it can also send data. If it has access to your business, then so does anybody else who has access to that device. So before we discuss the 5 ways to reduce risk, let's take a moment to discuss what a mobile device actually is and what the inherent risks are involved with those mobile devices. A mobile device, that term has become colloquial to mean any device that is mobile. And I think a lot of times people picture a mobile device to mean something they can pick up and easily move or carry around, like a cell phone or a tablet, something that isn't bolted down. But the reality, though, is that while the term mobile makes it seem less ubiquitous than what it really is, It's actually more than that. But what about, for example, your wireless smart thermometer, if you have a Nest at your house that controls your AC and your heating? Or what about the thermometer in your server room at your business? Or if you have wireless cameras spread around your building, or the Bluetooth from the cars in the parking lot, or the Bluetooth from the phone at your desk, if you guys are using headsets. The term mobile device is an easy and clear term to say most people will understand. Most people understand what it means. But when it comes to securing your business, remember to incorporate every wireless device that could interact with your organization, regardless of the ability to move it. So you can say mobile device, and most people will know what you mean. But really, in DiamondIT, we call it endpoints, user endpoints, because at the end of the day, that's sort of where the end of the security line is, and the user interacts with that device. So it's an endpoint. And there's a list here in front of you, but it could be many different things, as we'll cover here in a moment. And with the rise of endpoints or rise of mobile devices, we know that we're starting to see it more and more often. New phones and tablets are released monthly, with lines out into the parking lot waiting to buy the next iPhone. I think I heard from some of my coworkers that they waited in line for hours to buy the latest iPhone. So it stands to reason that as this happens, their presence in the workplace, it also grows, right? So as my kids now have their own tablets and their own Nintendo Switches and things like that, I find that I also have a tablet and I have a phone, and I take both to work with my laptop because of certain situations. So as mobile devices or endpoints grow at the house or at the home, they're also growing more at the workplace. So according to two articles that you see here, both the Hitwise and Fact Tank, the average American owns 2 smart devices per American, which is kind of crazy to think about because it's an average, which means there are people out there who own more than that. Not only are these mobile devices or endpoints incredibly common, but these endpoints are also amazingly advanced. So the average cell phone, think about this for a second, the average cell phone is more powerful than a supercomputer from the 1990s. The average cell phone is more powerful than the computational computer that's on board the new Orion spacecraft. And the average laptop is faster than most computers that people have at their houses on desktops. So to quote our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man in this case, with great power comes great responsibilities, because these devices can do so much more than what they're programmed to do. They're convenient though, and they enable us for communication, right? Endpoints can be used to access company data. They can be used to get inside company buildings as sort of a security token. They can authenticate yourself to your laptop or your email if you guys have MFA turned on. They can be used to find a location. You can look up Google Maps. They can check the temperature in a room, or you can use them to take a picture. But this convenience that mobile devices provide is also a convenience that it provides to the bad guys. It provides security issues for us to deal with, right? So ransomware, we've all heard of ransomware at this point. The biggest malware movement that's happened really since the 1990s and worms were invented is now ransomware has become a very useful thing for hackers, but it came out of a convenience of the past. Ransomware is really just encryption. It's trying to keep your data private. And all ransomware does is it takes that data that Windows 10 makes private for you, but it takes the password and it throws the password away so no one knows how to get that data. But it's a part of Windows 10 that's built into the environment to make sure your data is safe. And ransomware is just using a loophole in that convenience. So with every mobile device, as it increases your convenience, it also, in a way, increases the convenience for the bad guys, unfortunately. So as we go through here and we talk about the benefits and the risks of mobile devices, one thing that is important to keep in mind is that we also have to talk about cost, and we have to talk about how a corporation or an organization can handle these mobile devices. You can make them corporate-owned with a higher upfront cost, because you have to now buy all these cell phones for however many employees you have, which could quickly ramp up. But on the same end, when you own those devices, you can control them a lot better, and you can reduce that risk. On the opposite spectrum, your employees can do what we call BYOD, bring your own device. And in that sense, the employee can come into the office with their own iPhone or their own iPad or their Android device. They can log onto the business network and utilize it as they need to. The cost for you in the organization goes down because you no longer have to buy phones for everyone. There is a potential cost that you might have to pay them, perhaps a reimbursement for using a phone. And there's also a security issue because now you have less control, because it's harder to dictate what you can do with an employee's phone versus what you can do with a company's phone. So these are all factors to consider as we talk about mobile devices and how they interact in the workplace. Yes, they are convenient. Yes, you do have options as to how you want to acquire them and use them. But the reality at the end of the day is that we need to acknowledge that there's a risk with these devices. The biggest problem is that anything viewed on your phone is potentially saved, whether it's an email or a picture or a video. All of that information, that data, it can be saved and viewed again later. If your phone possesses your MFA apps on it, so if you get some sort of token or code that you have to type in when you log into something, then that's also saved on your device. And somebody else could also use it to log into the same stuff you're logging into if they get your device. If someone finds your smartwatch, they now have the keys from the smartwatch that allows it to connect from Bluetooth to your phone or to your car. And along those same lines, they can perhaps get inside your house or inside your company, because really we keep our phones close to us at all times, and our lives almost live on these phones now. So it's just important to remember that everything is interconnected with everything else. Your company Wi-Fi is sort of the on-ramp to the entire organization's information highway, if you will. And a recent study that was released a few years ago, back in 2015, illustrated exactly what I'm talking about right now, is that 6 years ago, HP and other organizations were already aware of issues with mobile devices. And we don't mean just laptops and cell phones, but smartwatches as well, and any other smart device out there. Because again, with that ease of convenience and simplicity, you also have a ease of the security posture at times. So as we go through these slides, just make sure, if you can, try to remember, it's not just those few devices that we consider mobile devices, but it's really anything with a wireless connection. And now when I was first originally coming up with this webinar and this presentation, I wandered around the office at DiamondIT and I started asking other employees, how many smart devices do you have in your house? The average came out to around roughly 12 to 15. And for myself, I realized I have 21 smart devices in my house. And if I can, I'm going to pick on Jeremy here for a second. Jeremy, do you have a rough idea of how many smart devices you have in your home?
I'd almost have to take off my shoes to count, but I mean, I think we've got 3 Echo Dots and 5, smart TVs and a bunch of Rokus and Fire Sticks, and then you add in the laptops and every kid has an iPhone and iPads and whatever else. I think we would be north of that number of 20, Cody.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I started thinking about it and I was like, oh, the printer, don't forget the printer, and then we have the doorbell. And we have the Nest for our AC.
And the printer and the doorbell and yeah, I even have lighting modules to turn some of my lights on and off with some schedules and with smartphones. So you got to add those to the number. I think we're closer to 40 or 50 maybe. I don't know. A lot.
Exactly. There's a lot more, right? Then you're listing your phones, and then as you start thinking about it, you realize there's a ton more than you realize. So as I walked around and I asked everyone in the office,
I don't have a fancy fridge yet.
But yeah, I don't either. But you're welcome to buy me one. But you get everyone gets the point, right? So there's a lot of smart devices in our houses these days. Well, that means there's a ton of smart devices in our businesses as well. I can tell you for a fact that we've had customers who needed us to open up ports in the firewall because the air conditioning company could not access the air conditioning monitoring of the server room. So no one could see the temperature in the server room. So we had to open the firewall up. We had to, if you will, sort of decrease security to allow the HVAC company to see the heating and cooling temperature system inside the server room. So as you think about your own business, you may not have the fancy refrigerator, but you probably have wireless printing, or you have an AC unit, or you have lights or cameras. The point is there's sort of a plethora or a growth or an explosion of mobile devices. So it just really is fascinating. Now, some of those common risks, I think some of them we are all aware of, theft being the big one, right? So a laptop, a phone, a tablet, all these small devices are incredibly easy to steal and sort of break into or hack. But beyond just theft, you have employees who, either through negligence or ignorance or malice, they do things every day that compromise an organization. And at times you have malicious actors who can utilize exploits. Then of course you have simple damage, running over the laptop, or perhaps we had one incident where a laptop fell between the cracks between the door and the elevator, and it actually fell down the elevator shaft. One of our customers reported that incident. So really, lots of different things can happen. And finally, compliance. Compliance is becoming a huge problem these days. The risk there isn't that something will get lost or stolen necessarily, but what if your child logs into something they shouldn't and accidentally alters patient data or company data? So now you've got a HIPAA violation on top of all the other risks you have. So the risks are growing. But as those risks grow, what can you do about it? Well, hopefully today we're going to talk about the 5 things you can really do to reduce that risk of these endpoints and reduce that risk or that window into your business. The first one being what we call device control. It's using technology to control the devices as much as you possibly can. You can control everything from how long the device is turned on, how long someone's watching Netflix, what apps can be installed, and so much more. I use it for parenting, and you can also use it for your business as well. So in the first 5 ways, we're going to discuss something called MDMs to control these devices. Now, MDMs, otherwise known as mobile device management, is sort of a umbrella term for software that is used to control all the endpoints that we've discussed. MDMs started as a way to just remotely control laptops, then they went to cell phones, and now they can control a huge variety of things. There are many different MDM offerings by a lot of different companies. We, DiamondIT, use Microsoft Intune, generally speaking, which is the Microsoft version of MDM. But before I move on from this slide and talk about what they can do, Jeremy, you mentioned that you're pretty well versed in the licensing for MDMs, and you shared a really interesting tidbit with me the other day that I was hoping you could speak on real quick.
Yeah, I know Microsoft licensing can be overly confusing. I mean, you almost need a degree just to interpret, what you have or what you need. But Microsoft Intune really is a standalone product, but licensing is included in most enterprise licensing plans, like Microsoft Office E3 and E5. Those are those big enterprise licenses. You can be bought as a standalone component as part of their enterprise mobility and security, like E5 license. But the cool thing is for a lot of our clients, a lot of small businesses, Intune licensing is included in some of the Microsoft 365 plans. Those go beyond just the email hosting and the Office applications to get you security features, entitlement for Windows 7, but also things like the basic, parts of mobility and security, like Intune. So a good deal of our customer base already has Intune licensing as a part of their Microsoft 365 business licensing. But a lot of organizations already have this. They're just not leveraging it. They don't even know that it's an availability.
Yeah, I am a little embarrassed. Even I didn't realize that if you have email through 365, there is a fairly high chance you already have licensing for MDM already. You just need someone to set it up for you. So when he shared that with me, my mind kind of was blowing. I was like, oh, we need to get it out to everybody. So I just wanted to announce it real quick. If you've already got 365 licensing or email, please ask us. If you already have MDM licensing, call us and let us know, and we can look into it for you. And if you do have it, perhaps we could start configuring it to keep your organization safer. So just a tidbit that I discovered the other day. But back to MDMs, mobile device management. These are powerful tools that can be used to ensure that a device has multiple security options enabled. So I want to go through a couple options of what MDM can do for you, just to give a rough idea. And this all has to do with controlling the device. So once the device is enrolled into the MDM system, it will be forced to comply with whatever settings you've configured without providing the user an opportunity to prevent or bypass it. So they have to comply, basically. So for example, it can be used to encrypt a laptop's hard drive, and it will do it remotely. They don't have to bring it in. They don't have to do anything. The user gets the laptop, and they'll automatically have an encrypted hard drive because that laptop is already enrolled with MDM solution. And it makes that laptop harder to read. It makes it harder to hack into. And if someone were to steal the hard drive, they couldn't read the data because the data is encrypted. MDMs can also be used to remotely wipe a device. So that same laptop or phone that we just encrypted, it can also be instantly wiped from anywhere in the world, no matter where they are. So not only is this really beneficial for security, but if you are the type of organization that, say you wipe a laptop before you reissue it to another employee, you can now do it in a much more cost-effective way. You don't need an IT person to sit down in front of that laptop and do it for you. You can just push the button and it's wiped, and you can give it to another employee, and it comes with Windows 10 blank installed already for you. So it's incredibly useful. It's important to think about MDM solution not only as increasing security, which it does, but it can also cut down on cost. It can cut down on operations. It can allow you to do more things and be more productive with your remote devices than simply just increasing the security. Along those same lines, device control is also about forcing certain settings. So many employees, and this one I've seen, not necessarily at Diamond, but I've seen it during my commute when I've been at the doctor's office. Many people, many employees, they don't have a phone lock. They don't have a screen lock of any kind. They don't have the swipe where you have to make the little design or put in a PIN number or a password. But most people, they don't actually lock their phones. And so at least once a week, I'll see someone when I'm out and about who they just look at their phone, they just do a thing and it's open and there's really no security at all. Well, you can use something like device control to force all users to have security. So at least if they have company emails on their phones, you have to put in a PIN or some sort of option before you can unlock it. Device control will allow you to force this so they can't turn it off. And along that same line of thought, your device can be controlled to require multi-factor authentication to log onto something. So if you want to log onto a computer at DiamondIT, you actually have to retrieve a PIN from your phone and type that PIN into the computer before you can unlock the computer. This increases security by quite a bit because in order for a bad guy to log into a Diamond laptop, they would need both the laptop and the phone. And they would need the PIN to unlock the phone on top of it. So you can see how quickly, by using device control or mobile device management, how quickly you can secure your endpoints. Another thing you can do is you can ensure that you have the correct updates and that everything is up to date. So think back for a second. When was the last time that you asked your IT manager on the current patch health of your servers? When did you last ask, are your servers up to date? Probably in the last 30 days, maybe the last year, right? You would have asked that question. But when did you ask if their laptops were up to date? Generally speaking, as long as your employees don't drastically change settings, Windows will update itself, right? But what about that Google Pixel phone that your accountant has? Or the Razer phone that the marketing director in your company uses? Is every iPhone in your organization up to date? Is it running the latest OS? Does it have the latest security patches? By utilizing device control, we can ensure that all of our devices, and not just our servers, are receiving security updates. And trust me, if you're a CSO or a business owner, this helps you sleep a lot better at night knowing that all your mobile devices are updated. Finally, using device control, you can require that devices only connect over encrypted connections. So instead of browsing the internet while at Starbucks and then looking at company email, they actually have a VPN that's automatically turned on that the device uses 24/7, so their connection is always secure. You don't have to worry about it. And everybody can go to Starbucks as safe as possible. So device control utilizes mobile device managers, it utilizes domain policies and other technical controls to force devices to do what your users either they don't know how to do or they really don't want to do. But for some businesses, I understand that controlling devices may not be a good fit. It may be cost prohibitive, or in some cases, perhaps your organization it's just not a good fit for how you operate. So a second way that you can reduce the risk of mobile devices is through device monitoring. So simply instead of controlling it, you monitor it. You monitor for specific behavior and changes. By monitoring the device as opposed to controlling it, you're allowing your employees more freedom to get their job done, but still ensuring you have a minimum level of security. For some endpoint software, it's also cheaper to monitor a device versus controlling that device, which can reduce your cost significantly at times. Monitoring mobile devices can mean a lot of different things, but essentially what we mean is we're not implementing a technical control, we're just passively watching. So you shouldn't see the same sort of perhaps performance issue or security issue that can come with enhanced security. Instead, we're simply just passively watching. One of the things you can do is you can passively just track someone's location. And you're not necessarily trying to track the employee, but perhaps you're trying to prevent access when an employee is outside of a certain region. Say they go on vacation to Europe, and you don't want them to log in from Europe because what if somebody else takes the phone? You can just passively monitor it and passively ensure that if they are in that region, they can't log in. It can be used for reporting purposes. In case something gets stolen, you at least know the last location. And perhaps you can report that location to authorities in the event of a theft. So it doesn't necessarily have to do anything besides tracking the location of the device itself. It could be a laptop or something like that. So it doesn't have to be so, I guess you could say, overarching. Along those same lines of thought, though, we can monitor user behavior. Some jobs require that employees utilize endpoints without supervision throughout the day. Say maybe they work remotely. So monitoring that behavior will help you stay in front of that risk. It could be inappropriate content, or it could be something like a large data exfiltration or a large data deleting large data. So we have a customer actually who they're a podcasting company, and they utilize a lot of shared folders inside Dropbox. And everyone inside these folders can delete anything inside Dropbox. But if you delete anything over a gigabyte in size, it sends an email to the manager and it just says, hey, just so you know, somebody deleted, say, 2 gigabytes of data. That's a great example of monitoring because it doesn't stop people from deleting. They can still continue to do their job, but it does make you aware of any behavior that seems outside of what you're normally used to, which is a great example of why monitoring would be helpful. It could increase your security, but it doesn't necessarily affect the productivity of an employee. changing gears ever so slightly, some employees, particularly ones who like to travel a lot, they'll often have data on their machine, data on their laptop, because it's continuously changing as they travel every day. So they keep that data locally on their devices instead of on a server. Well, you can back up those local devices and you can monitor those backups. So not only can you monitor a server's backup, but you can also back up a phone or a tablet. And you can ensure that that data, however crucial it is continuously being backed up. So you have compliance, you have security, and you can recover in the event of an incident. So it's already bad enough if you lose a device through damage or theft, but this way, if that device is gone, at least you didn't lose the data on top of it. And then a few of our customers who have Microsoft Intune, as I mentioned before, they don't actually use device control for Microsoft Intune. They don't use it to encrypt anything. They don't use it to lock anything. But what they do is they use it to monitor compliance. So it's all just passive. It just reads devices that are enrolled in Microsoft Intune, and it will alert you if a device is no longer HIPAA compliant. So in this case, the manager or the employee can then go and they can have a discussion. They can figure out why it's not compliant, and IT can fix it. But to me, this is a very elegant solution because it doesn't force your employees to do anything if you don't want to go that route, but you can still ensure that you remain compliant with it. And then, of course, in the event that something does happen, we can receive alerts that there's a virus. This can allow the IT department to both verify that a threat was removed, or it can also be used to receive a notification that the end user has something that the AV can't fix. And unfortunately, I know it seems kind of silly having antivirus on a phone, but unfortunately, antivirus is no longer restricted to just desktops and laptops anymore. We talked about the exploits that they have now found with smartwatches. So actually, I just read a recent KTLA article that demonstrates that cell phone viruses are on the rise. Cell phones are a primary target these days. They usually do not have the same level of security that a company laptop would, but they still have access to company email, company banking information. Your entire life is on your phone, so they could theoretically get all kinds of information. So while I encourage everyone to have an antivirus application on their phone, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 5 years, when you buy a new phone, it's probably already going to come pre-installed because it's becoming that big of an issue of having viruses on your phones. Because as we talked about before, they're really just really small computers. So the theme of monitoring, in a nutshell, it's really about logging. It's about having a trail of either the virus or the user behavior or the location that they went to. This logging will allow you to ensure that your company data and your company employees are safe. And you don't have to implement any sort of expensive technical control like a full MDM solution if you don't want to. But in the event that something unfortunate does happen, you'll have a log to go back. You can see exactly how it happened, how it was compromised. This will allow for both quicker and cheaper recovery in the event of an incident, but it will also keep you compliant and may perhaps even help with your cybersecurity insurance. So both device control and device monitoring are what we would consider to be technical controls. They both involve information systems, and you have to get IT people to do things for you. But generally speaking, these controls, they require a technical person. However, there are other controls that can be used to reduce risk that doesn't require a technical person, such as having effective company security policies to cover that organization in the event that something does happen. And I think a lot of people roll their eyes at a policy because they don't see it as effective of a measure. But policies are a great example of an administrative control. Policies, they document procedures, they document processes that make users aware and outline what should and should not happen as your employee utilizes a company system or company data. And a great example of a policy is an acceptable use policy. This really should be the bare minimum for every organization. You really want to try and have one of these. If you don't, please let me know and I will happily assist you in getting one or creating one. What an acceptable use policy does is it outlines for every employee in the entire organization what they can do with company equipment, company internet, company data, and how you can expect them to live within those rules and what happens if for some reason they break those rules. You can then use that to go back and give disciplinary action after the fact, or you can address the claim and bring it to their attention. An acceptable use policy will help ensure that people are staying within the bounds of your expectations. It's a lot harder to write up an employee for doing something if you haven't already explained to them what they can and can't do. So acceptable use policy is a great thing to have. If you need any assistance writing those, let me know. One of the reasons why you may want an acceptable use policy is to prevent company equipment from being used in an unsafe manner. So for those of you who have never heard of jailbreaking, Jailbreaking is the act of purposely reducing security in an endpoint device so that you can use it for other things. So for example, if you have an iPhone and you would like to download, say, Angry Birds, but you want the Angry Birds from the Android store and not from the iPhone store, you have to jailbreak your phone so you can run both apps on both stores. For some people, this is great. They don't have to buy two phones. They can play all the great games that they want to play. But by jailbreaking that phone, you reduce the security of it. You take all the security settings and you basically erase them. We can prevent that from happening. But if you don't write that down in your company policy so an employee knows they're not allowed to do it with a company phone, even though it may seem like common sense to us, the acceptable use policy or a policy in general will help keep the company covered in the event that an employee does something like this. A list of approved or denied applications is also a great example, I think. For those who are not aware, quick story time. Last year, I don't know if you guys remember, there was a controversy over an application called TikTok. For those of you who are like me and have been living under a rock, you may not know what TikTok is, but TikTok is it's sort of a video application that you can use to make really short videos and then share them with your friends and your family. You make short clips, kind of like a mini YouTube, if you will. The problem is that TikTok, it tracks a lot more user behavior and user data than we realized. And so once the security researchers were able to map out what happens with this data, they started playing around with it. And they realized that you could map out a military base based purely on the information from TikTok. Because what happens is all the soldiers had installed TikTok on their phones, their wives had TikTok on their phones, and you could figure out why was there this clump of people in the middle of nowhere, and all of them seemed to be in the military on their Facebook pages. And pretty soon they could map out the buildings, they could map out the perimeter of the base, all based on what TikTok data was reporting back to them. This situation eventually culminated in the president at the time, President Trump. He considered banning TikTok at one point because of the data and how unsafe it was. So this is just a great example of why you may want an application blacklist or deny list, or an application allow list, to have that policy fleshed out so your users know you can have these applications, but you can't have these. And that's a bit more cost effective than having a full-blown NDM solution that you have to pay for that won't allow them to install it. And then I found, on top of all this, that if you wander around the office, there are generally two types of email users, right? So there's the very judicious and organized email user who will delete every email that comes in after they read it. And then there's email users like me who have 39,000 emails, and I've read all of them, but they're just all in the inbox and they're just a giant mess. Drives everyone crazy, right? But you tend to see, along with people who have different apps on their phones, people manage email in different ways. Do your employees know how long they should keep an email for? Do they know what email they should retain versus what email they can delete? Regardless of whatever email category you fall into, it would be helpful for your employees to know what they should do with that information. Maybe for compliance reason, you have to keep email for 5 years, or maybe not. Either way, if your company doesn't have some sort of policy saying what we should do with this information and what we should do with our mobile devices and the data on them, then you don't know if that data is actually secure or not and how it's being stored. Everyone's just going to kind of do their own thing, which is why policies are so important. All right, so let's say you've decided, all right, you got me. We should make some policies. We should make some monitoring solutions. We should purchase MDM, and we should start controlling all of our devices. Great, Cody, how do we get started? My first question is going to be, well, how many devices do you have? Do you actually know how many mobile devices you have in your organization? Do you know how many laptops and cell phones and tablets? Do you know who they're assigned to and who's using them? If someone changes hands, if one person leaves the company and another person receives their laptop, do you know it went from that person to that person? And do you know if they've seen those same policies? So as you think of an acceptable use policy, the very next thing I would suggest is some sort of data and equipment inventory policy, something that is used and utilized to enforce, who has what, tracking that information. And this will go a long way to keeping your organization safe, because not only are you trying to enforce mobile device management, but you're also making sure you have mobile device management installed on every device. Because if you miss a device, you've effectively kind of left a door unlocked, if you will. But all of these policies, they can mean very little if the employees are not aware of those policies, if the employees haven't been briefed on those policies and they're not trained on how to use their endpoints. So I know we covered the first three. We covered device control, monitoring, and device policy. But now I want to get into training, employee training or device training. DiamondIT has been offering phishing training for a long time now. Every quarter we send out phishing emails to all of our companies, all of our clients, where we attempt to trick them into clicking on phishing emails. And if a user clicks on it, they then have to attend training to understand and look out for the various warnings of phishing emails. Well, that's part of employee training. That's part of security awareness training. But does it tell them necessarily about the security issues on their mobile devices? So as we go through here, I want to talk about real quick some of the security issues that perhaps your users aren't aware of, but probably should be trained on. The perfect example is Bluetooth. Many phone users, they leave Bluetooth on all the time. And I'm not sure how many of you know this, but most laptops also come with Bluetooth enabled. By default, Windows 10 comes with Bluetooth now. The first iteration of Bluetooth was completely unencrypted. Any device using Bluetooth could see any other device using Bluetooth and read all that data that's going back and forth. Now, they've developed more secure versions of Bluetooth, and sometimes that secure version is synchronizing with other devices. Sometimes it requires a PIN. It makes it harder to eavesdrop. But Bluetooth by itself is still not really considered secure. The majority of Bluetooth protocols are still unencrypted, and they can read your data or listen to your conversation if they're within a certain radius of that Bluetooth. But if you walk into Starbucks and you walk in there with a Bluetooth scanner and you open a connection, you'll get 10 other devices requesting to connect. And those users don't even know it. They don't realize that their devices are walking around trying to shake each other's hands. So you want to train your users not only on the acceptable use policy after you've developed these policies, but you want to train them on things like awareness of what their mobile device is doing. Do they have Bluetooth turned on in a public environment? Do they have Wi-Fi turned on? Wi-Fi, which is generally speaking more secure than Bluetooth, is also often left on by everyone. And this device that's in your pocket or it's in your backpack, it's walking around with you. And every time it sees another device with Bluetooth or Wi-Fi enabled, your phone or your tablet or your laptop is saying, hello, how are you? Let's talk. If you have it enabled, that's what it's doing on repeat over and over. We're talking about the most friendly, extroverted person you've ever met. That is now your cell phone or your laptop. It walks around, it tries to exchange handshakes with everyone. If it exchanges a handshake with another device, it'll start sharing data back and forth. Now, it's not going to be anything private necessarily, unless you are sharing that data with that other person, but that connection has been made. So I don't want to beat the subject in your head. I think we already get it. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Hotspot, all these wireless connections are a bit of an issue. So it's important that your employees realize that these are turned on. Maybe they should be trained on when they should have them off in public areas. But in general, it's just a risk, and they just need to be aware of it. I'm not saying they shouldn't use it, but perhaps your employees should be aware, especially on the company phone. So you just need to train your users on these devices and when they should and should not have something enabled. And I want to give one more example as to what happens. Every year, there are a few different IT conventions. One of these IT conventions, a large majority of MSPs go to, and they discuss, the upcoming trends in technology and security, et cetera. Well, at this IT conference, someone had set up a Wi-Fi point for free Wi-Fi because nobody wanted to pay for the hotel Wi-Fi. These people logged into the free Wi-Fi portal. They had to create a quick little account, and then they had free Wi-Fi. Well, when they did that, they reused the same passwords that they used for their work email or for their Gmail account. They just reused things. And somebody took all those passwords that they had then set up on the Wi-Fi, and they went into those MSP systems, and they just guessed. They just took these same passwords that people had been using, and they used them again. And sure enough, one of the largest breaches in Texas IT companies was done because that user had used the same password at the conference as he does at work. So really, when it comes to acceptable use, you want to make your users aware, and not only of a company policy, but you want to make sure they're trained on it and they understand what's going on. So teaching your employees how to use the device and what is expected from them, and when they should not use a feature on that device, it will help them think twice before they make a bad decision. And then how many of us have been on our phones while we're commuting or while we're waiting at the doctor's office or getting food in line? Do you pay attention to what's on your phone? Can the person over your shoulder see it? Can they read patient information or company data while you're in line at coffee? And I don't want anyone to feel paranoid because that's not the goal of the day. But we all remember that incident that happened a few years ago in Hawaii, I think, where the emergency missile warning system went off and everybody in Hawaii thought that they were about to be bombed. Very, very scary, right? Well, part of that came about because on their desk was a Post-it note with the password to the emergency system. And someone had taken a picture of it and they saw that Post-it note. So it's important that we train users on being aware of what they're looking at on their phones and where they are in public. Because if they're looking up a password, for example, and they're in public, someone could see that company password. It seems common sense, it seems simple, but if you don't train your employees on these things, then there's a somewhat decent chance that they may accidentally, inadvertently expose your company to risk that they didn't need to. So we just want to make them aware. We want to make them aware of standard practices. We want to make them aware of company policies and company data, just so that we can increase security for everyone. And then finally, in the case of an incident happening, you want your employees to report it to you. You want your employees who lose their cell phone that has a company email on it. They may be more worried about just replacing their cell phone. But will your employee call you that night or that next day and say, hey, just so you know, I lost my cell phone. Company emails were on that cell phone. Some employees will think that way, but some will forget. They'd be too concerned with other things about what other information was on their phone. And so this is why teaching them and making sure that they're aware is so important. So maybe at this point you're thinking, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that. What else can I do? This sounds really expensive. It sounds like I'm going to have to make a lot of changes. Well, you don't have to. There is a last option. You don't have to necessarily get device control and monitoring and policy and training, although I do think a combination of the above is both useful and helpful. There is a final last option you can do, which I have decided to call device circumvention. What it means is you can circumvent those risks that cell phones and tablets and air conditioning units and doorbells, you can circumvent all of those things that pose risks to your organization by just going around those devices. This can be really cost effective if you don't want to pay for an MDM solution, as you don't need to pay for it. You don't need to buy the licensing and figure out how to configure it, et cetera. You can instead just tell your devices, or I'm sorry, tell your employees, you can't have mobile devices in the workplace. This is a very simple one, right? I've been to a couple of organizations where they don't even have Wi-Fi. They said, nope, no one's allowed to have Wi-Fi. They're not allowed to be on their company. I'm sorry, they're not allowed to have their cell phone on company Wi-Fi. We don't even have Wi-Fi. So those organizations have decided they're not going to take the risk at all, and they're just going to throw it out the window. That is an option you can do. It may reduce communication. It may reduce the quickness and effectiveness of your ability to, say, read emails or communicate with your employees, but it certainly is an option. The federal government uses this in secure federal facilities all the time. When I used to work in the Army, there were many buildings where you just couldn't take your phone in at all because the Army decided the risk wasn't worth the benefit, so to speak. So today, for example, Jeremy, who is on the road traveling, he's helping me deliver this webinar while he's on vacation on a laptop. Had DiamondIT not allowed for our employees to have company laptops, I don't know that Jeremy would be able to do this webinar with me today. So there's really a pro and con to this one. I wouldn't necessarily suggest you do this unless there's a good reason, but you know, for certain organizations, it may be beneficial. The second thing you can do is instead of worrying about controlling that device, you can control the system that the device is trying to connect to. So you can have Wi-Fi, but you can lock that Wi-Fi down and control that Wi-Fi using enterprise Wi-Fi radius, for example. So only, say, the cameras in the business can visit it and the business owner, and nobody else is allowed on. You can create rules, you can create policies, so that if somebody wants to access your company Wi-Fi or access your company data, they have to abide by these rules and these policies. But this way, you don't have to actually pay for a mobile device solution. You're not touching the cell phone. You're not controlling the cell phone at all. You're just controlling the Wi-Fi and people's ability to access the Wi-Fi. So we can expand that even bigger. We can talk about company data at large, whether it's email or servers or files. You can, instead of trying to control the device, control their access to that system. So for those of you who are using Microsoft 365, and I don't mean to go back to this again, but it's a very easy example, you can use something called conditional access. And what that conditional access or that conditional policy does is it makes it so if somebody doesn't meet those conditions, they can't access it. The easiest one is, let's say you want to have it location-based. If someone's not in California, they can't log into the server. And that's it. That's all you have. But that still prevents 99% of the malicious actors who are not in California from logging in because they don't meet the access policy. So instead of trying to control a device, you're trying to control the access of those devices. So this is called conditional access. So that you could do this, for example, say if the OS isn't updated, if it doesn't meet a certain requirement, whatever it may be, it allows you to circumvent or go around buying an MDM solution and just use what you have available already. Now, keep in mind, this won't protect the emails on, say, Jeremy's laptop, but it will make it so he can't view them unless he meets the requirements set by the access policy. So hopefully that makes sense. The information really can be accessed in a number of different ways. You can enforce MFA, you can block stuff, etc. But it is a cost-effective way that you can control what mobile devices access without having to control the device itself. And then finally, if you're one of the people who uses your phone for MFA, if you have to type in a code before you can buy something on Amazon, for example, there are alternatives. So if you want to ban cell phones from the entire organization and not let anyone inside, but you still want multi-factor authentication, you can get a token, a little sort of USB stick that you have to plug in, or a token that generates a code on your keychain that you just look at and you type that code in. You don't have to have a cell phone. As long as you have two types of authentication, say, for example, a password and a fingerprint, or say a password and a USB stick, you don't need the cell phone. So you can circumvent that need of the device in order to still be secure. Finally, I want to talk a moment about balance. And I like to think that DiamondIT has achieved that balance both for ourselves, but also for our customers. What I don't recommend is I don't recommend you go through this list and you think, I want device control, but I don't want to do company training. What I would instead recommend is to use a mixture of all 5 ways. You want to reduce your risk, where you can enable a company to maybe be compliant with HIPAA or NIST, but also allow those companies and those employees to work. So at the end of the day, security is about having just enough security that you're secure, but it doesn't prevent your employees from getting their job done. And DiamondIT has done a lot to help through this process. We've helped businesses be compliant. I've worked with a recent company that went under an acquisition, and I made sure that they were up to date on all of their security policies, so that when Amazon went to buy them, Amazon just said, yep, you're looking good to go. We're going to go ahead and make this acquisition happen. So as you go through these steps, don't think you got to do all of them. You can just pick and choose and mix and match whatever is within your budget and whatever is affordable for you. And also, just to throw it out there, if you have any questions or if you would like more information, feel free to reach out to us. We can do it over the phone. If you want to go to Starbucks, we can. Just remember, Jeremy's buying. So having said that, we can help. And if you're not looking for mobile device management, but you want policy hardening, you want training, you want to set up multi-factor authentication, or you want a security assessment, DiamondIT can help in a large variety of ways. So, and with that, unless there's any questions, Jeremy, I'm going to turn it back over to you, sir.
Thanks, Cody. A lot of information and a lot of really good detailed recommendations you gave to everyone today. We want everyone to make sure they have a good takeaway from today's event, and so we've developed a lot of free tools available to the business community like this. We have a free security guide. We'd like to invite everyone to go to our website, download this free guide, and you can check off the items, see if you guys have the right security, if you're checking off the right boxes. So another one of our free offerings we have available to all of our customers, to the business community. So please go check out our website, check out that free security guide and see what you guys have. I want to see if anybody has any questions. We'll leave things open for a few minutes here in the Q&A. Please drop us your questions. We'd be happy to speak to these. Someone's asking here if I get to buy lunch. Yeah, if you want to give us a phone call, you want to have a conversation about how we can help, I'm sure I could figure out how to buy a cheeseburger or even something, a cup of coffee, something else. So thanks, Sam, for that question. I would love to take you to lunch when you get a chance. Cody, did you ever get a final count of how many devices smart devices and technology you have in your office? You said, or your house, you said 21?
Yes, 21. I'd have to go back to the slide. Some things that got me was the printer. Forgot about the printer. And then we have the doorbell with the camera on it. We have a few cameras that kind of look over the driveway. And then we have tablets. We have an Amazon Alexa that never stops talking. And then let's see, Jeremy, one that I hadn't thought of that you have is you have a wireless device in your pool, right?
Yeah, I have. Well, it's more the light switch for the pool light. So we've got fancy pool and it looks real nice and it's kind of cool when you turn the light on. But you got to walk all the way outside to where the pool equipment is, behind the fence in the corner of the yard. Hope you don't step in on a dog landmine when you get there. So I put in a smart switch. And I set up a rule, so at dusk, the light comes on and the pool glows, and then at dawn, if I don't turn it off before I go to bed, at dawn, the light will turn off automatically. So it's kind of cool, the fact that we get to leverage that pool and that pool light just by using some home automation and some cool technology. In my house, I actually do have all of my smart home technology separated. It's segmented on a dedicated, subnet and firewall from everything else. Both has some practice and some good exercise, but just to kind of keep those things separate from my business traffic or even my personal traffic. It's really as isolated as a security measure.
Yeah, my favorite is whenever you have a group of people come over and all the kids join and everybody's asking, what's the Wi-Fi password? Then you have to play a little dance as everyone tries to figure out what the password is.
That's funny. I wonder if Alexa can tell you what the Wi-Fi password is. I'm not sure you'd want her to, but that'd be kind of a cool trick to teach her.
I didn't think about that one. Let's see.
My kid's favorite thing is to have Alexa tell them a fart joke. So
yeah, yes.
We should teach Harrison how to use Alexa for fart jokes. I bet you get a kick out of that.
No, I don't think he needs to learn that one. Moving on. There's a question here. I thought Intune merged into Microsoft 365. Great question. So Intune is part of Microsoft 365. Intune has the component called Intune, and then it also has a component called Endpoint Management. Jeremy, help me here. I think it's called Endpoint Management System or Endpoint Management Portal. Endpoint Manager, excuse me. And both of those combined make up Intune, which is part of 365. It's built into it. It is the same product, if you will, but various licensing will control what parts of that product you can access. So yes, it is part of 365. It can be bought separately, but it is considered under the umbrella of Microsoft 365 suite. Jeremy, I believe, did you have anything to add on that one?
No, you hit the nail on the head. The Endpoint Manager is the new roll-up, and Intune is a component of that. So they're separate but equal and equivalent. So both words are interchangeable.
All right. Well, unless there's any other questions, I believe Jeremy's going to go buy everybody lunch right now, and we can go ahead and conclude this.
I want to invite everybody to, I think our next event is going to be on Azure and cloud services, cloud server and cloud services. So keep a lookout for the invitation for our next event. Shoot us an email. You got all of our emails here. You got Matt, the CEO, Cody, and myself on this slide. Let us know if you guys want to copy the recording, a copy of the slide deck. Make sure you get on our mailing list. You guys get the invitations and our newsletters. I would love to see you guys join us on our next event. And we talk to you guys soon.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and have a great day.
Thanks.